In determining if your money is going to last as long as you need it to, inflation is a big factor. Today I'm going to talk about historical inflation numbers and what that looks like for you going forward in retirement. I've talked about it before, but again, inflation is the increase in cost of goods and services. It's somewhat tied to interest rate, but definitely not completely. Inflation is making bread and milk go way up, much more than it used to be 50 years ago. The cost of stamps I've talked about before. Many years ago you could buy a stamp for 2 cents. Now it's hovering around 50 to 55 cents. Alright, so inflation is a big part of retirement projections for us. We typically use a number about 3%, projecting inflation. Again, to project over the next 30-40 years is impossible, but we feel that's a pretty conservative number. So if you look at this chart here, you can see the average annual inflation numbers by decade. So if you look at the very end there, the long-term average between basically the last 100 years is an average inflation of about 3.15%. There has been high inflation years, like if you look there between 1913 and 1919, of almost 10% a year the cost of goods and services were going up. And then it dropped to a period of deflation in the 30s, and then went up to as high as 7.25% decade average in the 70s. And as interest rates have continued to go down a bit, you can see that correlation there to where inflation over this past decade, from 2010 to 2018, is hovering around 1.8% per year. Again, inflation is not a fixed number, it's just simply analyzing data that's happened to the average price of goods and services. Okay, so inflation's a big factor. It's the reason we save, we invest, so that our money grows at a faster rate than inflation, so that when we're going to Chick-fil-A or wherever it is, you see those prices continue to go up in retirement. Hopefully your investment returns are keeping up with that, so you can still have your chicken sandwich. In my next video, I'm going to open up a discussion I've been really excited to talk to you guys about, which is insurance. I'm going to be talking about all sorts of insurance starting with my next video. I'll see you next week.